Welcome to the Bitcoin Business Podcast put on by Sovereign. As usual, I'm your host, Brandon Karpolis. And this week we have a very special guest, someone that has probably in the Bitcoin space had the biggest influence on my framing of the world, looking at the world, and the biggest influence in a change of how I viewed things. And The Price of Tomorrow, the book, the author, Jeff Booth, who is our guest, truly reshaped how I looked at things. And I started thinking about things in business specifically very differently. So we're going to get into that. But before any of that, Jeff, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time coming on the Bitcoin Business Podcast.
Thanks, Brandon. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for that nice intro.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I've thought a lot about is sort of this idea of creative destruction. And as we go forward, as we have a hard money standard, as I'll just say a Bitcoin standard, because Bitcoin is truly the only hard money that's ever existed. And there's harder monies, but there's no hard money like Bitcoin is. And so, in an environment like that, you are going to, as you famously say, everything falls to the marginal cost of production. And so, in that system, you have businesses who are ultimately going to be replaced by other businesses who figure out a better, faster, cheaper way to do those things. So, in the future, and say we're on a fully Bitcoin standard, hypothetically, do you view sort of business and the business market being something where you almost get in, make your product, you innovate something, you generate profits and cash flow from that, you store it in the hard money, and then you're kind of forced out. And it's almost like you can either go do something else, you can innovate, or you've generated enough of this hard currency in the short amount of time you've been in the market that that theoretically could, I don't want to call it a retirement, but be a living enough money for you to sort of live as everything gets exponentially cheaper. So I'm curious your view and thoughts on how the business world looks like that in the future.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it looks like. And why always start with the natural state of the free market is deflation. Prices fall to the marginal cost of production, because most of what people are challenged with that idea, and some would call a utopian, and not understanding markets, and it's if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, this is inevitable. And it's not inevitable one day. It's inevitable right now. It's happening right now. So that's what's happening in the free market. That's what's happening in Bitcoin. If you're creating more Bitcoin than by creating value in business, today, a lot of these business owners could retire. And like not 100 years from now, today. But if they want to stay in that business, because the business then creates margin, and then other people that attack that margin to try to create more value, and prices, that's why prices fall to the marginal cost of production. So that business has to constantly innovate in service of humanity or die, right? And if they constantly innovate, if they create the new thing, they'll create more value for society, and people will use the new thing, and they'll be able to make more money. But all the while, all of their actions are helping out every other human, because it's in line with the natural state of what the free market should look like. Essentially, you're playing an infinite game. The free market is an infinite game. We have to compete with each other to provide value to each other, and we choose in our own minds whatever we choose to give us more value. So in that market, it just keeps on happening. Um, and there's that that breaks people's brains, largely because they've never experienced it before. They can't imagine it, and so they're asking. What they're really asking is, I'll do it one day when everyone else does it, right? And one day will come. And then some people, and you're probably one, just running a podcast in the space, some people have just moved their time, and they're already experiencing it. Some people have moved their time even more, and they're getting paid in sats, and they're paying just about everything they can in sats, and they've moved their time even more. So they're already experiencing the future. It's just not evenly distributed. But it's already exactly as you just described, and it will be, assuming the caveat, if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, which I'm sure it will, it will happen forever.
I it, that's it's so mind blowing. And to your point, I am one of those people. I don't hold any dollars, or I hold $100 for some walking around cash or something like that. I don't. I really don't hold dollars. I pay my bills via a lot of these options that are out there, and my family's on a Bitcoin standard, and that is how we live. And to your point, I left my fiat job of 19 years to go come work at Sovereign, and we're doing a podcast, we're doing media stuff, and the improvement in your life as you extract yourself out of that situation, you start to experience it firsthand. And yeah, you brought up the point of people always say they'll do it one day, right? And it's the same thing I tell everyone with New Year's resolutions. Like, if you didn't start in October, you're not going to do it. So either commit to it or don't. You're fooling yourself if you think you're just going to start because of some arbitrary day on a calendar. You have to change your habits. You have to change the way you live. You have to change your outlook on everything to actually begin living those things and taking yourself out of the system. And and then you see something like that, these ice shootings and stuff, and it's just like, I don't even care. Like, it's, yes, it's horrible, human beings have died. Yes, it's horrible, we have an overreaching state. Yes, it's horrible, we have a welfare system that allows people here, blah 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 blah, all these things. But when you can just pull yourself out of that, it's like, oh, this isn't affecting me. I'm not letting this bother my life. And now I can go give my time and energy to something productive. But until you've actually lived that, I don't think most people believe it's true. What you were, sorry to loop back, what I was originally going with this, where you said, I'll do it one day. That's everyone wants to be a late adopter, right? They just say, okay, well, when everyone else does it, then I'll get in. It's the classic thing. It's like all markets. When people start piling in, it's like, okay, now I'll get in. But I don't think people realize the true benefits and the power of getting yourself extracted from that and doing something in there. I'm curious as to your thoughts. Do you think it's a psychological barrier? We just want to be a part of the crowd? Is it people just don't want to think about this stuff? Why do you think it's so hard for people to extract themselves out and watch their lives get so much better?
Yeah, all of the above, because they don't know that it's possible, because the psychological barrier, because of the cognitive dissonance of, if what I describe is true, um, then it means the construct that we've lived in, or most people live in today, has always been a lie. It's always been, and we have to face that in ourselves and how we've contributed to that, and we've been fooled, and gone to war and killed people all around the world, and it's not them, it's us, and that could be so big that it would break your psyche. Um, and so you have to go through that. Why I say this specifically for me too, and why I'm really vulnerable and honest and with humility of myself going through that, is I'm not better. Right? Once you're in a different place, you want to think, like, in group bias, out group bias, because you're part of a crowd. You'd never be part of a crowd, be part of a group that you didn't think. Your natural tendency is, I'm part of it, it must be better, right? And the group that's not part of you, they must be worse. So you put this hierarchy on other people, and it only serves to push people away, and we all fall into that trap. So it's not better, it's, I was once there. I moved my time over a period of time, and making tons of mistakes on moving my time. And only after I moved my time could I see, a new reality emerging that was also just a mere reflection of my thoughts, beliefs, actions. Um, my thoughts, beliefs, actions in the previous reality were mirroring back to me as well, and I didn't know this reality existed. So, so everybody has to choose their own path. I'll give you an example of something I did today, just to because you know how long I've been talking about this, right? And the same thing over and over and over again. And about 2 years ago, I went off Twitter, but I kept my account, but I never posted on. I haven't posted on Twitter for about 2 years because I wanted to move my time to Nostr and all the freedom tech and the privacy tools and everything that's building there, circular economies and meeting people and spending my time with the people I wanted to spend with instead of in the fray. But where AI is going, and I've known this for a long time, how fast AI is going. So I'd created an AI agent, and it's been trained on all of my videos, my book, my previous Twitter profile, and everything else, and about 1,000 podcasts, in my voice. And I released that to Twitter this morning. But I released it with a note also that this is an agent. If you want to stay in the chaos, arguing with bots, you're welcome to. But my time is I'm spending my time with people and with people and things that I love. But you're welcome to do this all day long, almost to show people the craziness of their actions within that, because because my time isn't worthwhile doing that anymore, right? But an agent with prices falling to the marginal cost of production says it costs me nothing. Okay, people want to argue with bots, argue with this bot, um, and hopefully in that you both people would see, oh my god, where this goes in this centralized control structure, and that they are a part of taking it there. That they don't realize that they're taking it there. It's just taking all of their time. And so I thought it was just an interesting way to show, exactly what I've talked about for a long time, and have people make the decision for themselves where they want to put their time.
That's so cool as an experiment too. Is like, let's hold a mirror up to yourself. Is this really what you want to be doing? And I'm of the belief that I think we're actually kind of at the peak exhaustion of social media and everything else. Maybe I'm going to be terribly wrong. Maybe this is like a 2021 Clown World top call by Marty Bent, but I think people are starting to look for ways to get back to actual human interaction and being with people, sort of getting out of this agitation chamber, if you will. And I like the idea where you're kind of like, hey, FYI, this is a bot. You will be arguing with a bot, which is probably what you're doing 90% of the time, anyways. But if you want to have some actual original conversation and thoughts with people, great, interact on Nestor, where if you know the person's real, or interact in real life with someone, where you're actually having genuine conversations and relations with people, and sort of stepping out of this psyop, you know, propaganda information overload that you're just being onslaughted with 24/7. And I'm curious, do you think we're going to start going back to more personal interactions, wanting sort of that human connection, as opposed to, I like that you're kind of the tip of the spear on this, of throwing this out there. But I mean, do you think we have much farther to go before we sort of revert back to sanity? Or
I don't share your optimistic view,
okay,
and um, because if you think about what the system does and why, so there's been an open door for 17 years for people to move into Bitcoin and understand it. What do most people do? They stay stuck, right? There, and that fear, coercion, control gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and it drives more fear and such a lock in of their beliefs that they truly believe that it's everyone else. And the more that you believe that it's everyone else and it's not you, the further away you are from deep, meaningful, loving connections. Because you're in this. So this is literally reprogramming people's minds, but they don't know that they're inside the matrix reprogramming their mind. They think it's everyone else, and those other people think it's those people and everyone else. And so so it's getting worse, not better. Um, and and I have to ask myself. I often ask myself, probably every day, if my view of the world looks like this, and it's accurate, and somebody else has a completely different view of the world and it's totally accurate to them, how do I know I'm right? How can I how can I know? Because you can, this happening if they're so fooled, and so fooled, but they're so strongly believing that their case, and then, and I'm just human too, then wouldn't I have to assume that that could happen to me? And I'm very careful to be aware that it is happening to me, and to adjust and adjust. And the only thing that I can really do at the end of the day is objectively measure the life that I'm building, and say, out of a scale of 1 to 10, what is it? What is it in my family? What is it with my friends? What is it in my business? And if it's not a 10, it's me. It's not everyone else, because you can see everybody else thinks it's somebody else. Um, and so I just to hold a really high standard, and so I can find the errors in my own thinking. Um, and then I don't judge anybody else for how they want to live their life. If they want to do that, it's up to. In fact, pushing them, and in fact, from my experiencing, pushing them and almost appearing smarter, or pushes them down the hole. They don't want to hear it. So people have to be ready. They have to want to change themselves. And sometimes that's by hitting complete bottom. Sometimes that's by somebody that they really care about turning the sign around on their forehead and saying, "I need you to know this," right? Because and it's coming from a place of love. It comes from all different places, but ultimately somebody has to make the decision themselves. Same thing you did, same thing I did, same thing we all did, and we were once also lied to in the matrix, not understanding, and then we have to think of who helped us in our journey, and could we even mention all of the people that actually help? And it'd be impossible to, because there's so many people that helped us form our own thoughts and ideas, and then we moved it forward. So I guess it's from a level of love, compassion, that I just see the entire world there. Also see the um, the the risks of them staying there for them, but I don't need to stay there.
So you bring up a very interesting concept of this idea of right versus wrong, right? I believe this. I think I'm right. This person believes that. They think they're wrong. I mean, I was trapped in that. I was the ultimate. I have to be right at the end of the day. Well, one, I am right, and so therefore, you're wrong, and I'm going to explain to you why I'm right. And it wasn't really until I started going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, rediscovering my faith, and I started that transformation was making values and well, let's just say values based decision. What is important? What do I deem to be moral? What do I deem to be good? Do I care about my family? Do I care about money, fame, prosperity, or do I care about personal relationships? Do I care about the love of someone else, like you said? Do I care about loving my neighbor, as Christ loved us? Am I doing a good job of that? And the answer is probably not. I was I was not doing a great job. I'm still not doing a great job, but I'm working on it. That being said, I really started reframing things from a sort of binary right versus wrong framing to a values based framing. And I think that's what you're talking about, is that if you can reset, look in the mirror, to your point, realize that you you have been lied to as well. You were living under a set of preconceived notions, ideas, things that were planted in your head. You think they're your thoughts, they're not your thoughts. They were someone else's thoughts that got put in your head, and you said, "Well, that thought's in my head, therefore this, therefore that," and that's how you're reaching conclusions. But you really have to go back to first principles and say, "Oh, where did I learn this? How did I learn? Where did I learn that Winston Churchill was a hero of World War II? And who told me that? And why? And is there some truth to that? No truth to that? Let's go back and look at these things. Let's go reconsider some of the things I've been taught in my past." But even that is a lot of time, effort, and energy as opposed to taking actions in accordance with the values of good and of well-spirited
Let me even
love
go,
of others.
but let me even poke on that a little bit.
Okay,
When when does bad become good? When does good become bad? Like, is it so when you think about it, just a ruler, right? Name the spot that it changes, and there is no one I know, no one I meet that doesn't perceive themselves as good. And even when they do something really bad, they have their own reason that tries to make that good on why, right? And they don't want to face that. Now, I'm not saying there isn't, right? I'm just saying that where is the line, right? And then because and then if people that we're close to, we'll forgive them for doing something because we know them. But people we're not close to, we won't, right? Because we don't know them. And so what you get into is all of this hypocrisies in our own brain, right? On the relative goodness or badness of different people that feed on that. And so even in values, and I'm not saying you're wrong because you're right exactly how you describe it for you. I'm just saying for me, I've just kind of thrown that notion away, right? And I know I can learn from somebody who I disagree with 99% of the time. And I can take the
sure.
one tiny thing that they do, and I don't need to take the rest of the things, right? I can take the one tiny thing that they do exceptionally well. I can incorporate, and I can think that interesting, without having the other things trigger me, right? Because it's not about them; it's about me. And when and what you'll find, I think what you'll find, what I found, is the thing that triggered me to judge somebody else was me. It was me wanting to be better or to stand out from that person to create that I'm better in this way and the same. And so I use the triggers of those things that would to drive deeper into my why, right? What did it mean for me? Because I control all my time. I control every bit of my time, my time, and I should decide how to spend it. And why am I spending it on thinking about somebody else and what they're doing?
Yeah, there's ultimately a waste of time when you start putting it onto other people and start trying to figure out what motivates them and what decisions they're making. I mean, I absolutely agree that it does always comes back to you. Everything is you. You know, there's no such thing as offensive speech if you're not offended, and so you get to make the choice: are you offended or are you not? There is no, I mean, which is, I'm sure I don't I'm sure we wouldn't disagree on, all these hate speech and everything. It's like, well, who's the arbiter of what's hate? And of course all these, arguments that have been rehashed 8 million times, but at the end of the day it's your reaction to it, and only you have control over your reactions.
Exactly. And you can choose to not spend time there. You can choose, but this is one of the things that I find in social media that's so interesting because when I say you see social media, you could just say it's a giant social experiment on on essentially a system corrupting us from our own hypocrisies, fears, wanting to belong, And it's using that same thing that's in all of us in human nature to be able to divide faster and faster. And we bite from the exact same thing. And you watch it, and you mentioned it before, and what's happening in Minnesota or anything else. And it's a car crash economy. And you're just waiting for the next car crash, and people are just amplifying because it's taking the worst of us into a system that's trying to drive more clicks and more advertising dollars and centralizing.
Almost like these people knew what they were doing or something.
Yeah,
Well,
but again, but it would be, and from that, and I try not to say those people because I
I know
realize
I knew you were going to say that too,
it,
because it is up to us whether we choose to let what's being done to us be done to us or not.
and there is some truth, right? The 150 people that run the world, and Chamath wants to be one of those 150 people instead of trying to build a different world. It is true that it has so much power. It is true that if you lent money into existence, that it would naturally create that, right? And it would be exactly so. There are these people that are at the top, but I'm sure even those people don't sit around every day and say, "How do I do this?" It's just no. There's some evil people too, um, but you have the power. You have the and as soon as you start ignoring them, if you believe in them and take your own agency, they go away because there's nothing they can do if there's a they.
I couldn't agree more. I That's been the biggest life changing thing is taking autonomy over my time, over what I want to be doing, and um, listen, I get it that people have to keep the lights on and people have to put food on the table, and at some point maybe you aren't doing exactly what you want to be doing because I mean, I don't know. Like, is it worth starving or going to a food bank? Obviously, if you have those decisions, these are moral conundrums for people that they're in, and you have to make that decision as an individual how you want to do it. But when you do find something like Bitcoin, when you do understand the value proposition of low time preference, and as you begin diverting your time and energy and resources in this world into Bitcoin, into yourself, and doing what you want to do with your time. Or, hey, listen, some people may choose, I want to do this for my wife. I want to do this for my grandkids. I want to do this for God. I want to do this for whoever. But as long as it's your decision and who you're giving your time to, that's what's important. And that's what allows you to sort of escape all this stuff. And as time goes on, yeah, you're not going to wake up at 16 and just be able to go, do whatever you want, most likely. You're going to have to start somewhere, start doing something, and maybe you will, maybe you have that opportunity, and then build into that and start developing yourself personally and, if your family into a situation where you are able to extract yourself out of there. But I feel like I
And
got to
again,
think more about this.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if you're right, if you want to, and if not, stay.
Yeah, well, that's the sad part. We were talking a little bit about that earlier. I do think there's some people who legitimately want to stay. That there's I don't want to call it joy, but some sort of dopamine hit or some sort of rush or something they get from being agitated, and it's just not a good way to go through life.
Yeah, Bren. But again, instead of thing, what are they getting? Like deeply, what are they getting?
Yeah,
So what?
there's something
So
wrong,
yeah.
right? Yeah,
So let's say somebody who's angry at the world,
yeah.
and they mirror back, and a whole bunch of other angry at the world people find them. What would that feel like? It would feel like love and belonging. And to not be angry at the world would be mean leaving those people that find your voice important, and it would be finding a new group of people. And so it feels like loss. So is and there, wherever you are, your level of consciousness, whatever that looks like, is mirroring back at you. I it, you can understand why people stay, and they don't. They don't. When I say that, and I say myself too. I'm not putting myself in a different category. I'm just human. Make the same mistakes, done this the same thing. I just understand why it would feel like loss to be able to move to a different state, and why from your previous state you wouldn't be able to see your new state because you wanted to stay. It would feel like risk to move to the new state.
You have to lose yourself as well. You have to lose your own identity and become, I mean, I will say that was, I don't want to say one of the harder things, but maybe one of the things I noticed the most as I sort of completely reframed my worldview and made a lot of different decisions in my life was a lot of people reaching out with stuff that normally would spark a conversation or, get a laugh or whatever. And it was just like, it's just not landing. I don't care. And it's like, well, okay, now this is someone I was close to, someone that was this, they valued me for this personality that I had, and it's like I can't reciprocate anymore. I can't give it back. I don't get any validation. Yeah.
So funny. I hear that a lot with Bitcoiners. How they've now are in a new group of Bitcoiners who are all values aligned and everything else. And I see the truth in that too. But a lot of them have lost all of their old friends because, and I also not, and this is again not judging, but I still have my old friends. I still have all my friends from when I was 5 years old. Um,
I do too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so you don't have to lose them, right? The
Yes. Agreed.
you can still they wouldn't have been friends from 5 years old unless we carried something like all of this stuff and really good people, whether they're Bitcoiners and no today maybe more most of them are Bitcoiners, but but watching that path unfold, they weren't at first, and not only watching that path unfold, but watching me do the same thing early on in Bitcoin, trying to get them all to understand right away, shake them into, and it wasn't them, it was me.
And I actually applaud them for being patient with me, saying, we've had this relationship for a long time. I'm just going to let them go through this phase, get it all out. And they stuck around for me just as much as I was like, okay, great. I don't really care, what new war Israel's gotten into, and I don't want to talk about that anymore. And so to your point, it was this long-term relationship that we have kept and we have stayed in. But now it's reframed on different stuff. There's a lot of um, different topics and things that we care about. And I would say it's actually made us closer and better friends and more accepting, more forgiving. Not forgiving, that's not the right word, but more accepting of people doing different things than us, and that's okay. All right, okay. We spent a lot of time on sort of the philosophical side, which is great. I love this stuff. I could talk for forever about it. But exactly in line with what we're talking about, sort of realizing you're part of a system, realizing you're being manipulated, and that was what formed your life previously, and that being able to step out of that, one of the things you have to do is kill your ego, and you have to accept that, man, I'm not so great as I thought I was wrong about a lot of things or wildly uneducated about a lot of things. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And it is tough, but it needs to happen. And, pride, and everyone knows the sin of pride and all that. Um, the name of the venture firm, or I don't know if venture firm's the right way to phrase it, but I think that, yeah, I think that would be right, is called Ego Death Capital. And I love the name. It's awesome. And so we talked a little bit about it at the beginning in terms of what sort of this creative destruction cycle, the everything falling to the marginal cost of production looks like. But how do you and the other people um, in ego death, how do you look at projects? What's sort of the assessment, the valuation that has to be done when you're looking at things through a Bitcoin lens as opposed to a fiat lens?
Yeah, it's very different. It just as as an aside before I go there. When I used to invest in fiat land, you'd watch companies go through pre-seed, seed, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Sometimes it like H. they'd and they'd still be not profitable trying to go public. And so billions of dollars into these things that had huge brands and everything else, but still weren't just funneling money, good money after bad, and then trying to go public to dump on shareholders. And then you had this whole crypto thing replaced that, so the VCs could essentially dump exit liquidity on other people. So that whole nonsense of that world looks very different than in Bitcoin. So especially with people who have been in Bitcoin for a long time, because these founders not guaranteed to be successful, but understand Bitcoin, and then you're trying to create value in Bitcoin, you're probably thinking creating long-term value. So that's what we see in, if I just said how many stupid things we see in new things tied to Bitcoin, and crazy valuations, and crypto trying to move onto Bitcoin, just complete nonsense. And then you get a different class of founder that's trying to create long-term value and has an idea to create long-term value, whether by extending a layer, or making Lightning integrate like Roy from Breeze, right? Um, and creating open source technology that would integrate into a whole bunch of other things and accelerate the adoption of Lightning by doing so. Whether you have bunch of people on Noster. Noster is a little earlier still, but a bunch of different projects and such on Noster. They have something like Fediment that's building privacy into another layer, which is going to be critical need for Bitcoin to scale. So you see incredible founders, incredible projects, and everything else, not guaranteed that they'll have success, right? Now you're handicapping, but when you're investing in the venture, how do you supercharge company and try to put the right conditions together to have a lot of success? And will this provide a lot of value? And you also know that if they're successful, everyone's going to copy them, and they won't have any moat. So, um, so, so you can create value. Um, I'll use a wallet, for example. I could create a wallet in 15 minutes right now using AI to vibe coding, and it would be better than most wallets were, um, 3 years ago. And so, just like I could create a calculator app for free. And so some of these things, even though they're valuable, can't create value for money wanting to invest in an ecosystem to be able to do. There's no barriers to entry. And those barriers to entry are, and when I say barriers to entry, the barriers to entry are getting lower and lower and lower all the time, because it's easier to code. It's easier for every single person to code. You don't need a huge team anymore. It's easier to take a piece of, say, Roy from Breeze's open source Lightning stack, um, Fedi, and create a federation, create something in Nostr, create an entirely new community by plugging in all of the different pieces of the protocol stack, and starting where 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, people had to build tons of money to build this protocol stack. You can now start and just plug into different pieces of this piece and launch and create value for other people. So prices keep on falling. Your ability to compete, you have to deliver more value, probably 10 times more value than everybody else is doing, to be able to do that. And to be able to find those pockets, now there's tons of those pockets. I mean, we're surprised, or not surprised, we knew there would be. But some are too early. Some are they're all over the map. Some don't have the right founding teams. So we see a lot of different things. And if I was advising somebody to just go start, create something, just start something that you think is really important for this space. See how far you get. You probably get a long way without raising money.
But we're doing it sovereign. We haven't gone externally to raise everything. We did a small internal raise, and we're a little over a year into this thing, and we went from zero to 15 customers last year, and we're hoping to go from 15 to 60 this year.
Yeah, and that's staggering, and that's what we're seeing in our portfolio. A lot of these companies are are now already profitable. They're growing extraordinarily fast, and they're adding more Bitcoin to their balance sheets each month by doing this thing. And they're not going from um, seed A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They're going seed, sometimes A, already profitable. And then if they want more money, or if they want more money to take some money off the table, right? That's what you're saying. You're saying a really profitable unit economics stuff. Not everything will work. It's the years ago, so no, maybe last year at this time, somebody came up to me that was in the Wolf cohort and challenged me on my thesis because his company didn't work in the Wolf cohort. I said that has nothing to do with the natural state of the free market being deflation. That has to do with how hard it is to create value, with more and more people wanting to create value and easier tools to create value all the time. You have to stand out. You have to be better. You have to find ways to be able to deliver that value. And if you don't, the free market will crush you.
Yeah, that's and listen, there's no guarantee at Sovereign that we succeed or we're progressing, we're making progress, but we could be too early. We could, to your point, maybe we don't have a good enough product. Maybe we're not differentiating enough. Maybe the people on our team aren't good enough. These are all things that constantly have to be thought about, constantly looked at to determine, are we going to have a successful enterprise here? Are we going to create value?
So Brandon, why I like having that high bar, and we obviously help. I help a lot with frameworks to help people get how to set structures up and frameworks up that have been very helpful in me in the past. But having that bar that it's always you don't blame. It's a marketing channel. It's this. It's that person on my team. It's always you, right? And so having that bar, my job is to deliver value. Period. A ton of value. Everybody in the company knows that that's the job. Otherwise, we fail. So, and it's a pretty great and high bar that services both the free market and humanity by doing the same thing.
I think that's such a cool thing about the Bitcoin space too, is that you are taking that outlook that I must deliver value. I would say that maybe not a majority, but a lot of people in the fiat world, they're trying to arbitrage the system where they're going, how can I provide as little as value possible and get the biggest paycheck possible?
How do
Wh-
extract more?
Yes,
When you're saying rent seeking, what an
yes.
asset becomes is how do I extract more? If I can't extract enough that way, now I'm going to have to I'm going to have to lobby government to create a regulatory moat so I can extract value that way. And so it's exactly the opposite. And this is where a lot of people get confused in Bitcoin. They're measuring Bitcoin from all this complete bullshit nonsense inside a world that's never been free. And so they can't get out of that, and they think the free market looks like what they're experiencing, and it looks so different than what they're experiencing. They're carrying that baggage into their decisions and the new. In fact, carrying that baggage so much that you can imagine if you hold Bitcoin and you're making a little bit more Bitcoin each month than you're spending, and I'm talking 50,000 sats, 100,000 sats, then your IRR versus this existing system is staggering compared to the person that is inside the other system. So you don't actually have to you don't have to replace your entire income from the other system as long as you're not spending it all.
That's exactly right. And it completely changes the way you have employees look at your company and what they, what we've been doing is, hey, we have a small amount of overhead. We have a little bit. We're going to give you an incredibly generous commission prospect for you, and you'll be able to work the deals you bring in as well, so you can get even more on top of that. And so it's up to you to create value. and then it's us on the business to create value for our customers, that we've assembled the right team of people to do what we say we're going to do, to help educate you about Bitcoin, help you get a good custody setup, help you accept payments, present you with 10 different options, find the best one for you. Is it are we worth our time guiding you on this, and are we adding value to you, and are the people that are trying to go help businesses that are boots on the ground, are they adding value to the business, as opposed to just, hey, we got a bunch of money. It's sitting in a war chest. Everyone gets a nice salary, and we expense your car, and we'll just see if this thing works or not. And it's everyone top to bottom. It's completely reframed. I love the way you said that. Are you adding value? That's every single person has to say, am I adding value? And listen, sometimes as leadership of the company, you have to say, okay, this person clearly is not adding value. And they're well intentioned, they're a great person, they're just not adding value, and we need to part ways. We need to go a different way. We need to go find someone who will add value. And those are hard conversations to have, but it's also the approach, as opposed to just being like, ah, well, this guy's kind of annoying and he's not doing a great job. Let's just send him to a different department, pass the trash, as we called it in fiat land, and just not have to deal with it because you have these regulatory modes, because you are not facing the competition that you should be facing. And you don't actually necessarily have to be creating any value to just sort of keep going on into perpetuity as a venture, as a company, as an organization.
Yeah, and literally this the Bitcoin standard and this framework, as long as the protocol stays decentralized and secure, literally it rewrites everything. We're already a part of it. It's not it's not one day it does. It's right now it does. And your question is, when are you going to be part of it?
Yeah, that's good introspection for everyone, is to ask yourself. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do at Sovereign, is convince you that that's what's happening. Not convince you, but explain to you that that's what's happening. And would you like some help getting to be a part of that? And so, um, well, Jeff, I wanted to ask you something about your book, The Price of Tomorrow, and is a question I had when I was reading it. And you did a section on the book about energy and the environment. And I'm just curious. I would encourage people to go read those. I'm not going to put you too much on the spot here, but have your views about that section of your book changed at all over the past 5, 6 years?
I think yes. I think if I did, so I'll start with, I wish I had gone deeper in nuclear in the book. And I suspect that part of the reason why that technology didn't move in the free market, and it's not everywhere, is because of the petrodollar system that gave the US dollar its power, that you couldn't allow abundant energy. So I believe that some of those things were slowed down. Now that might be tinfoil hat, everything else, but it sure seems like that would be. From other things I've observed, that how much this control system and the nonsense in it perpetuates it's this idea of, this is good for you, this is bad for you, from food to climate to everything else. There's some of these things that in that section specifically, I wish I went a little bit deeper. Not that some of the technologies I mentioned, like solar, they didn't actually have, they aren't following the exact same trend that I pointed out. It's just there should have been other technologies that were introduced too that could have moved even faster, and produced something different. And that then question makes you question, okay, what is this climate about, right? And why is it risen so high into the world, and why are people uh, I was probably neutral on it. I didn't know enough. What I felt like is there was no way to make an informed decision on climate, because there's so much noise on both sides. The fundamental thing driving it, though, which I've said countless times, even just after I wrote the book, how could you solve climate a system, if you believed it to be a climate problem, how could you solve climate from a system that had to manipulate money to grow forever, right? From this Rube Goldberg machine. So, but to directly answer your question, yes, I would. If there was one thing I would have changed in the book, I would have gone deeper in that section.
That's interesting because it was the one thing that stood out to me as I reread the book. I read it twice. I read it last year again as well, and I was like, I bet Jeff would have some differing thoughts on this today than he did then. But I mean, you want to get real tinfoil hatty. I'm an old world guy. I think we had free energy one time. We were charging airships on top of spires. So anything in the energy markets is I'm on board with. There's no way your tinfoil hat's thicker than mine when it comes to the energy markets. So you're in good company there. Um, I'm curious. As I said at the beginning, I loved your book so much. It was truly life changing. I recommend very few books to my mom. If my mom's on board, she owns Bitcoin. COVID really woke her up. She had quite a terrible situation with some of the offerings that were given to the public, and really started to change her views and just start exiting the matrix like we were talking about. But one of the books I did recommend to her, along with the Bitcoin Standard, and which, yeah, she read that, was your book as well, and she really enjoyed it. And I've kind of been wondering, is there another one on board? I would love to get another Booth book one of these days here.
I started writing one. I don't know. So that maybe I'll never say never. The that book I felt compelled to write. I didn't want to write it. I felt like I had to. It just kind of poured out of me because I had to say something that I didn't feel like anybody could understand or put together what was happening. Um, Even today, that book, right? That you can see people read it once and then stay stuck, right? And that book is one of the most interesting because the amount of people read it that read it over and over and over again and start to and take a little bit more each time is interesting. But the simple thing is, I I had to write that book. I felt like I had to write it for my kids because I could both nobody could understand what I was saying and and I couldn't put it together. So I going through it was cathartic to write it down because it helped me to explain it. And then I think there's probably better people to explain it today than I am. But at least I put it out there, and we'll see if I get to that point on another book. Maybe I'll finish writing it. But I don't feel like I need to.
I'm eternally grateful, and I'm sure many others are out there as well. But it's funny you say that. It's kind of like the musician, right? Who they spent their whole life inspired to write something, and then they put an album together, and it does incredible, of course, because it's this person's artistic vision and their entire life and their time and energy that they poured into this, and it just connects with so many people, so many listeners, so many music fans. And then a record company gets in there and they're like, "Ah, you got to crank out the second one because we made all this money and we need to make more money." And it's like, well, maybe I don't necessarily have good ideas, or I haven't thought about rhythms or harmonies or song titles or concepts or lyrics or anything. And you're kind of just forcing me into that. And so I don't want to do that. Not that I would have an effect on your decision on this one way or another, but I'm not saying like one has to come, and a lot of times it's just if it's not there, it's not there, and when it is there, maybe that's the time to do it. All right, well, Jeff, we're coming up on an hour here. It's been wonderful talking to you. Like I said, someone who really shaped the changing vision of my life and the world. So I can't thank you enough. I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably familiar with Jeff, but where do you want to hand him off to? Anywhere? Ego Death website, Noster.
Yeah, Ego Death Noster, or at my website, jeffreybooth.com, if they want to see that new post on why I wrote the AI agent.
You're almost making me want to go back on Twitter just to see
Yeah,
what that is.
don't do it. You don't need to. You can.
Yeah.
You're on Noster, but you could actually.
Yes.
I posted it on Noster last night just before I launched it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening. As always, the Bitcoin Business Podcast put on by Sovereign. You can find us on all the unfortunate platforms we mentioned: X, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are on Noster, and we have someone professional actually running the account now, so it'll be much better. I'm Plebe Anon on Noster, so come follow me personally on there. And Jeff, thank you so much for your time today. Really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.